So history tells us about two armies facing each other across a valley. Both armies knew that to go into the valley to attack the other army would be suicide, because they'd go into the valley and have to be attacking up. So the armies stood off at each other for a couple of days, and finally one of the armies decided to go with single combat. Now, single combat was very popular in that time. That said, each side gives their champion, and the winner of that battle is the winner of that. The winner of the single combat battle is the winner of that battle. So the first army sent down their champion, a giant of a man, at least 6'9", full of armor, some of the best armor at the time, javelin and sword and shield down, and they started chastising the other army. Send us your champion to battle this giant of a man. The other army looked at each other, talked to them. Nobody would come forward. Nobody would come forward to battle this giant, because it would have been sure defeat. But who came forward? Who came forward? A shepherd, right? Came forward and said, I'll battle this giant. No, you're too small, no. They talked him into letting him do it. Before going out, they said, well, let's put some armor on you. He said, no, that armor, that stuff, it won't do anything for me. So David picked up 5 stones, headed toward Goliath, put a stone in a leather pouch, swung it around 5 times, unleashed it. Goliath fell to the ground. And David ran over and cut his head off. And history tells us that the Philistines fled. So much ingrained in our society that David and Goliath today stands as the example of the little guy winning. What I'm here to tell you today is that we've all got that story wrong. We think of that story as he won by chance, that it just accidentally that rock hit Goliath in the head. But I'm here to tell you today that the story of David and Goliath was a story of innovation. A slinger in that day, there are medieval paintings of a slinger being able to knock a bird out of the air. A slinger in that day could kill a man at 200 yards. Goliath had no more a chance against David than he would have against a guy today with a .45 Magnum. David out-innovated Goliath. Who are your Goliaths today? Walgreens, right? CVS. I can tell you today that you're not gonna beat them by showing up in a full suit of armor and a shield and a sword and a javelin. You're not gonna out-bureaucracy them. You're not gonna outspend them on marketing. You're not gonna out-meeting them. You're gonna out-innovate them by being you and figuring out what your strengths are, and by innovating ahead of them. How are you gonna do that? Let's start out number 1, right? Thank God you're here. Because number 1 is to go to PDS every year. You're not going to be able to innovate anything if you don't know what's going on. It amazes us in the sales process, the people, 9 out of 10 people who you say, what are you doing with MTM? What are you doing with medication sync? And they say, what is that? So number 1, you gotta be here. You gotta figure out what's going on. Number 2, while you're here, you gotta connect with like-minded people. Find people like you who wanna innovate and connect with them on a regular basis. Share ideas. Number 3, you need to establish a 20-mile march. In 1911, 2 groups set out for the South Pole to be the first people to go to the South Pole. One of those groups had a mindset that good weather or bad weather, we're gonna go 15 or 20 miles a day. The other group had well, if the weather's nice, we're gonna go as far as we can. And they got exhausted, right? And then when bad weather comes, they'd huddle up in their tents, waiting for a better day. What happened? The The 20-mile march group beat the other group there and made it back. Who knows what happened to the other group? They died. They were found frozen to death 10 miles away from a supply depot. You got to leave here and next week, innovate. And the week after that, innovate. Don't try to do 40 things. Find a thing to do and do it next week. Number 4, and my favorite, you have to have a pharmacy software that's about innovation. 4 years and 2 months ago, we released a built-from-scratch pharmacy system into the industry. And we did some crazy stuff. Where our competitors were rolling out new features twice a year, we roll out new features once a week. Where our competitors had mediocre customer support, we put pharmacy techs on the other side of the phone, people with an average of 10 years experience in the pharmacy. Where you had pre and post edit as part of a switch where you got a reject back, we baked it into the pharmacy system. We said, oh wow, there's this neat thing called an iPad. That'd be a great thing to capture a signature at the drive-thru and give advertising. First person to put an iPad in a pharmacy. Oh, awesome. How great would it be if the pharmacist could walk up and counsel a patient right on their iPad? Ask anybody here on Pioneer about innovation, and they'll tell you, wow. I heard a vendor yesterday say, an add-on vendor, hey, if you had we can do all these really cool things for you, and if you have a great pharmacy system, you can use us. I was thinking in the back, if you had a great pharmacy system, you wouldn't need you. So, what are we gonna do? We need to start slaying giants today. We need to start innovating today. We need to establish a 20-mile march. We need to go home and we need to start innovating. We don't need to think about it. We don't need to get all the way to PDS next year before we start doing something. We need to start innovating as soon as we get back. And number 4, we need a pharmacy system that's going to innovate with us. Today, you need PioneerRx. I'd like to leave you with the words of Thomas Paine, that during our country's fight against impossible odds said, we have this consolation with us, that the greater the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. Thank you.